Eventually, every single step that you take or decision that you make gets based off of how the narcissist is going to feel about it, giving up things that you enjoy doing, caving to their demands, apologizing unnecessarily as an attempt to not wake the beast. Basically, striving to become as invisible as they have made you feel. Because sadly, for most, by the time you get to this point where you realize just how full of bullshit they truly are, that you genuinely are flabbergasted that they are even able to get all of it out of their mouth without choking every time that they talk. You've already been brainwashed, brain fucked, and have acquired brain fog denser than the marine fog around a swamp at night, on top of their perfect attendance in daily butchering of your self-esteem and your confidence. So you vaguely, at best, even remember who you are anymore, what you like, or that your feelings should be validated, and that your opinions and happiness do actually matter. At this point, you are just trying to lay low, to avoid being ambushed by insults or repeatedly poked by their mental cattle prod, to the point that you literally explode just so their delusional ego's Willie can get a cheap thrill by watching you come unhinged. And with each passing day that goes by, the more you lose track of who you are, the denser the brain fog becomes, and the harder it is to find your way out of this fairy tale from the crypt, and or get yourself out of this autopilot mode of being consumed by what they're going to think, say, or do, doing anything that you think may possibly upset them. Eventually, stop thinking altogether about your own quality of life and have become so accustomed to try to feel invisible that we actually go numb. Life starts to feel like one long, never-ending day, just going through the motions, staying on our tiptoes as we weave our way through the minefield of booby traps that they have methodically laid out for you. But unfortunately, this numbness only lasts for so long, because unlike cheddar and wine, narcissists don't get finer with time or better with age. No, they're more like flesh-eating bacteria that progressively get worse and become more painful over time, and as such, lead to many survivors, like myself, to start self-medicating in attempt to once again become numb. But as the pain from this wicked flesh-eating bacteria advances, requires more and more of a numbing agent to dull the burn from it eating you alive, as well as an extra little topper off so that you can swallow down the shame that you feel in needing anything to numb your pain, and then maybe perhaps just one more to help keep you in the state of denial about how much you still actually feel, until one day you wake up and realize that not only is this no longer being effective in numbing, but actually has created more suffering and misery, and the pain has become so excruciating that it surpasses the shame, embarrassment, and fear of not really knowing what to do, or really how you even got to this point. But you do know that you cannot do this anymore. You can either ask for help or you can die. That day for me was Tuesday, August 29th, 2017. And though when I picked up the phone and dialed the number for Serenity, set up the arrangements, later on that day, admitting myself for 30 days from trying to drink my pain away, my intention obviously was in that of seeking help and guidance to improve and make my life better. But I had absolutely no anticipation, expectation, or would have probably likely considered at that time that I made the call, and definitely not when I got the brutal wake-up call that kind of felt like a jab in the kidneys that came in the moment that I got introduced to the other girls in the house that I was in and joining them at the table for dinner. And you know that infamous pep talk that you often give someone about just imagine everyone sitting there in your underwear? Well, it literally was the opposite for me in that situation. as I felt like I was sitting at the head of the table in nothing but my skivvies, all eyes on me, asking me questions about a report that I didn't even do, in a language that I didn't understand, on a topic that I knew absolutely nothing about. Because in that moment was the first time in 17 years that I was away from the narcissist, in relation to it not be him out on the town looking for supply or doing who even knows what, while I sat at home with the kids or was at work. And having been isolated for so long was so socially awkward, from always either faking a smile to make the nightmare my life really was look more like a daydream, and had absolutely no agents in my system to help give me a fake boost in confidence that I truly was completely vacant of, and wasn't sure whether to feel like an ingrate or a moron when it got to be my turn to say my gratefuls. Not because I truly wasn't grateful or didn't have things in my life to be grateful about, but it had just been so long since I actually sat down and thought about it, as I had been consumed about how he was going to think, say, or respond to something, that I had totally stopped living and was literally like a lost puppy, empty as a tapped out cask of whiskey. And so in efforts to prevent myself from becoming any deeper shade of red that I already had grown to become, I managed to mutter off being grateful for my children, my family, and that I was grateful to be there, which though was true, but it wasn't until later that I truly was able to appreciate or recognize just how thankful and grateful about my deciding to make that phone call and insisting that I be admitted that afternoon, because I knew damn well that if I did not pull that trigger and hung up the phone before I had arrangements in tow, there was a 99.9% chance that my ass wasn't going, because I likely would have come up with some excuse or reason as to why I couldn't. And well, not only did I later grow to become more grateful and thankful for making this decision, but I can honestly say that still to this very day was not only one of the best decisions that I've ever made for myself, but truly ended up being one of the greatest and best experiences that I've ever had in my life, because it was something that truly opened my eyes and forced me to look at me and inside of me, and not only my flaws, but my qualities, and start thinking about the things that I liked, disliked, my wants, needs, and values that I hadn't thought about in so long, because I honestly, truly didn't even know who I was anymore. And the particular place that I went specialized in dual diagnosis. So they looked at not only your addiction, but looking at the psychological aspect as to what is the underlying issue that brought you to this point. Definitely worked out in my favor, as they were very big in incorporating family, friends, or loved ones in your care so that you have a better chance upon being discharged to stay sober. Well, let's just say that my ex had several moments putting on a good show of his true colors, because my counselors and psychiatrists were familiar with how being in abusive relationships can lead to substance abuse, recognized through the way that my ex spoke to me, through our interactions, things that he was saying, both in front of me and when they spoke to him separately on their own, the letters that he would write. And they had actually presented him with a pamphlet about narcissistic abuse. When I was preparing for my discharge, one of my counselors tried to strongly encourage me not to leave if I was going to return home to my now ex-husband, as he was convinced if I did that I was either going to end up right back in rehab or I was going to wind up dead, unrelated to drinking. He probably was right, had not too far after my returning back home that our separation began. Within this separation and distance from my ex that allowed the brain fog to dissipate and to start thinking about myself as I was trying to prepare for this video, that it dawned on me, I think the reason that I found this to be so effective and so life-changing is due to how I eventually feel addicted to the narcissist. So it actually makes logical sense that rehab worked. Knowing the reason as to what is that actually gets us addicted may be extremely beneficial for you to know in efforts to nip them in the bud and put you in the best position possible to finally be able to escape from these monsters. Due to the way that narcissists love bomb in the beginning of the relationship, then reverting to their hot and cold treatments, two major players behind this being dopamine and oxytocin. Dopamine is sometimes referred to as the feel-good hormone, as things that we find pleasurable is due to the release of dopamine and get picked up on at the reward center of our brain, as well as an oxytocin, referred to as the love hormone, is released through physical touch and during sex. And the reason that this is so effective with narcissistic abuse and their intermittent reinforcement is because they have more of an effect on the brain's reward system when the rewards are given out in an unpredictable rather than predictable schedule or continued cues. During the love bombing phase, becoming flooded by oxytocin, and dopamine signals to your brain that this feels really good, and constantly trying to chase that. And then through their use, intermittent reinforcement, giving us little bits here and there, leads to our becoming more addicted and longing for those releases of oxytocin, willing to withstand all of the abuse, knowing that eventually after you've received it, at some point, you'll get your fix. Which is exactly what happens and why people become addicted to things like cocaine, which many psychiatrists will agree is actually more addictive with the narcissistic abuse and toxic relationships, because there is the combination of the dopamine and the oxytocin, whereas other drugs, it's just the dopamine. And their being predictably unpredictable creates one biochemical bond from hell to be in. And it's one of the reasons why when they give you silent treatment and going no contact can feel brutally painful, because being isolated, your brain not only sees them as being your only means of getting this pleasure or love hormone, there's nothing else to focus on. And why no contact is so important, because it's time and distance from the narcissist and focusing on things that you enjoy and bring you pleasure outside of the narcissist. Your brain then will recognize the narcissist isn't your only means of receiving this reward. So the impact they have on you becomes less strong, in essence, rid you of this addiction. And anyone who is struggling or trying to numb this with any kind of substance, believe you me, I get it, but it doesn't do a damn thing. It is only creating more problems for yourself, as well as making it harder to leave. They know this. As much as they may try to shame you on it, they do not want you to get help. They want your life as dysfunctional, disorganized, and as full of chaos as they can strum up, and then times that by 20. They know darn well that once you remember who you are and start rebuilding your confidence, then they no longer are going to be the one in control. And facing your problems and asking for help does not make you weak. In fact, it takes a shit ton of courage and some big balls, which the narcissist not only knows nothing about, but doesn't have. They know they do not stand a snowball's chance in hell going round and round or toe to toe with someone who does. And if not for making that phone call back in 2017, there is a strong chance that I would still be married to that sadistic prick, and truly something that I don't even want to think about, because nobody deserves what these monsters bestow. Whether you are using substance or not, if you are enduring narcissistic abuse and you can find your way to get into rehab, well, I say go, 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 because hands down, it is the major marker that started my rise back up, and my world is a totally different place without that demon breathing down my back and getting back my life, my sanity, and my freedom, which each and every one of you undoubtedly deserve. Fight for you. Focus on you. Fuck the narcissist.